Welcome to Shadow of Truth, the town that vanished without a trace, the last night in Dorchester Falls. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, because after you hear this story, you'll never look at your hometown the same way again. It began as an ordinary Friday in Dorchester Falls, a small, tight-knit town tucked away between the Appalachian woods and the winding Harrow River. Population, 6 on 12. A place where everyone knew each other's names, where the local diner still served coffee for $1, and where the biggest excitement of the week was the high school football game. But by sunrise on April 17, 1991, Dorchester Falls was gone. Not destroyed, not burned down, just gone. No people, no cars, no voices. The entire town emptied overnight. When county deputies first arrived, they thought it was a prank. Mailboxes stood open, meals were left half-eaten on kitchen tables, radios hummed softly with static. It looked as if every person had stood up in the middle of their lives and walked away into the darkness. Sheriff Alan Brooke, a veteran of 20 years, stood in disbelief outside the town hall. "It's like they evaporated," he whispered. His deputy, Claire Weller, tried every radio frequency for miles. No signal, no response. Every phone line was dead. The first body wasn't found until 3 p.m. Near the edge of town, by the rusted railroad tracks, lay a man identified later as Thomas Keene, the town's electrician. His eyes were open, staring blankly at the sky, but there wasn't a single mark on his body. No trauma, no wounds. It was as if he'd just stopped existing inside his own skin. By evening, state police and federal investigators arrived. They set up a perimeter, combed through the woods, and sent helicopters overhead. But there were no footprints leaving the town, no sign of forced evacuation, and no vehicles missing. The residents' cars were still in their driveways, keys inside the ignitions. As the investigation deepened, they found more strange details. Every single clock in town had stopped at 2:43 a.m. Every single one. From the gas station's wall clock to the church tower's bells, time itself seemed to have frozen at that exact minute. Sheriff Brooke filed his report with the FBI task force, led by Agent Laura Kincaid, a sharp analytical investigator known for solving disappearances. But even she admitted, this one doesn't make sense. It's not abduction, it's not disaster, it's coordinated. But by who? The last recorded activity in Dorchester Falls came from a 911 call placed at exactly 2:42 a.m. The caller was Marcy Heller, a 16-year-old girl. Her voice, shaky and terrified, said only 7 words before the line went dead. "They're outside. Everyone's standing in the street." The recording ended with a faint hum, a low frequency that analysts later described as mechanical but not man-made. By day 3, search teams found something else, something that chilled even the most hardened agents. At the center of town square, beneath the flagpole, was a freshly dug pit. It was circular, about 10 feet wide, and perfectly symmetrical, as if carved by machinery. But there were no tire tracks, no shovel marks, and no dirt piles nearby. The earth seemed displaced. Agent Kincaid's team sent samples to the lab. The soil contained traces of magnetite, an iron mineral that shouldn't have been there naturally. Experts claimed it looked as though the ground had been exposed to intense electromagnetic radiation. But from what source? Theories exploded across the media. Cult activity, government experiment, mass poisoning, even spontaneous migration. But none of those could explain why every door was locked from the inside, or why no one had packed anything before leaving. Meanwhile, something darker emerged. Sheriff Brooke received an anonymous envelope, postmarked from a neighboring county. Inside were 6 Polaroid photographs, each one showing a different street in Dorchester Falls. But there was one haunting detail. In every image, the same shadowy figure appeared at a distance, always at the edge of the frame, always facing the camera, always at exactly 2:43 a.m., according to the timestamp burned into the film. Kincaid sent the photos for analysis. The figure's outline was human, tall, possibly male, wearing what looked like a long coat. No facial features could be distinguished. But there was one thing clear. The figure was holding something metallic, reflecting faint light, pointed toward the ground. And then came the breaking point. One of the search drones, flying over the nearby woods, detected movement. Thermal signatures deep in the forest about 5 miles from the town. A small group of heat sources, all stationary, clustered together near an abandoned coal shaft. Kincaid and Brooke led the response team in. What they found made them wish they hadn't. At the bottom of the shaft, buried under a thin layer of soil, were 6 human figures, perfectly arranged in a circle, facing outward. All 6 were missing their eyes. Every one of them was wearing a Dorchester Falls volunteer badge. But that wasn't the worst part. When they lifted one of the bodies for transport, the corpse's mouth fell open, and inside, embedded deep in the throat, was a small round radio transmitter, still emitting a faint, rhythmic pulse. Tick, tick, tick. That sound echoed in the dark shaft like a heartbeat. Kincaid immediately called for a full evacuation of the site, fearing contamination or detonation. But before the team could clear the area, the signal abruptly stopped. The air went dead silent. And then, from the static of their radios, came a distorted voice. Hoa, see, mechanical and distant. It's not gone, it's just waiting. The recording lasted 6 seconds before cutting off completely. Back at the command center, Kincaid sat motionless, staring at the radio. Sheriff Brooke broke the silence. What does it mean? She didn't look up, her voice barely above a whisper. It means, she said, Dorchester Falls didn't vanish. It was taken. Outside, the wind howled through the empty streets of the town, rustling curtains in houses that should have been full of life. Somewhere in the distance, a light flickered once, then died. And at the edge of the woods, a single figure stood watching, unmoving, at 2:43 a.m., the same time everything had stopped. The pattern of silence. The morning after the discovery at the coal shaft, Agent Laura Kincaid sat alone inside the temporary command post, an abandoned school gymnasium filled with maps, files, and buzzing fluorescent lights. Every investigator on her team had already filed their preliminary reports, but none of them could answer the question that gnawed at her. Where did 600 people go? She replayed the 911 call for the 100th time. Marcy Heller's trembling voice echoed through the static. They're outside, everyone's standing in the street. Then, silence, followed by that faint mechanical hum. Kincaid leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes. That sound. It wasn't random. It had rhythm, like a coded signal. Across the room, Deputy Claire Weller walked in holding a manila folder. Her face was pale. Laura, she said, her voice low, you need to see this. We've been cross-referencing missing town data. There's another case. Same signature. Kincaid opened the file. Black and white photographs, yellowed newspaper clippings. The headline read, Town of Merritt's Hollow disappears, 1956. A small farming community in Pennsylvania. Population 498. Vanished overnight. The images were eerily familiar. Empty houses, stopped clocks, untouched meals. And at the center of the town, it's a circular P. In the background of one photo, faint but visible, stood the same silhouette. The tall man in the long coat. Whoever this is, Kincaid murmured, he's been doing this for decades. That afternoon, the FBI flew in Dr. Marcus Levin, an expert in electromagnetic resonance and historical anomalies. He was blunt and analytical, the kind of man who saw patterns where others saw chaos. He examined the radio transmitters found in the victims' throats, then turned to Kincaid with a grim expression. These aren't military, not any kind I've seen, but they're transmitting something below audible frequency, low-band signals, the same wavelength used in deep communication testing during the Cold War. This wasn't random. Someone wanted to send a message. A message to who? Kincaid asked. Levin looked her straight in the eye. Not who, he said. What? Before Kincaid could press him, an agent burst into the room, pale and shaken. Ma'am, you need to come outside, now. They stepped out to find the morning mist thickening into a dense electric fog over Dorchester Falls. Compasses and Cheap's units began malfunctioning. Phones glitched out, and then the sound returned. The same low hum from Marcy's 911 call, but now louder, pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. Kincaid ordered the team to record it. The oscillation fluctuated at intervals, 2.43 seconds apart. The same number that appeared everywhere in this case. 2:43 a.m., the time the clock stopped. 2:43, Levin muttered, running calculations. This isn't a coincidence, it's synchronization. Synchronization with what? He hesitated. Something external. The hum built into a vibration they could feel through the ground. A nearby lamppost began to tremble, flickering uncontrollably. Then, as quickly as it came, the sound stopped. A few seconds later, one of the field agents radioed in. We have They got movement near the woods. Kincaid and Brooke followed a team out toward the edge of the town. Through the mist, they saw a figure, a man standing perfectly still near the old railway bridge. When they called out, he didn't respond. As they got closer, they saw his clothes, a tattered sheriff's uniform from another era. His name tag read H. Stokes. Brooke froze. Henry Stokes was the sheriff of Merritt's Hollow, he whispered, in 1956. The man looked up, eyes glassy, his lips trembling, as if trying to form words. When he finally spoke, his voice was brittle, hollow. "They're under," he stammered, before collapsing to the ground. Kincaid knelt beside him. His pulse was weak but steady. She glanced at Levin. "Get him medical support!" But before the medics could lift him, Stokes' hand shot out and gripped Kincaid's wrist with unnatural strength. His pupils dilated, and he whispered, "Don't dig. Don't ever dig." Then his body went limp, dead. The coroner later confirmed no visible cause of death. His blood contained traces of an unknown metallic compound, identical to what had been found in the soil samples. That night, back in her hotel room, Kincaid couldn't sleep. She stared at the corkboard filled with photos, timelines, and notes. The same numbers kept repeating. 243, 6 victims, circular pit, radio signals. Brooke knocked gently on her door. "You still awake?" "Barely," she said. He handed her a small cassette tape in a clear evidence bag. "We found this in the mayor's office. It's dated April 16th, the night before everyone vanished." Kincaid slid the tape into an old player. Static crackled, then a man's voice came through. The mayor, sounding anxious. "They came again tonight, said it's time, said the town agreed years ago. I told them we never agreed to this, but they said the choice was made long before any of us were born." The recording cut off with a shrill metallic screech. Kincaid's hands trembled. "What did they agree to?" Brooks shook his head. "No idea, but whatever it was, they paid the price." The next morning, a construction team arrived to excavate the pit in the town square. Despite Kincaid's hesitation, the deeper they dug, the more the earth changed color, dark gray, almost ashy. At 12 feet deep, the excavator struck something solid, a smooth metallic surface. They cleared the dirt away until they revealed a large circular object buried beneath the town. It was seamless, without bolts or seams, and covered in faint geometric symbols. "Looks like a hatch," one worker said. Dr. Levin's equipment began to malfunction again, readings spiking off the charts. "Stop digging," he shouted, but it was too late. The metal surface vibrated once, then emitted that same low-frequency hum. The ground shook. Power across the town flickered. And then, a sound emerged from beneath the earth. Not mechanical this time, but human. A collective murmur, hundreds of overlapping voices whispering the same phrase. "We never left." Every investigator froze. Kincaid's radio crackled to life, a voice on the other end, distorted, yet eerily calm. "Agent Kincaid, step away from the site." "Who is this?" she demanded. The voice replied, "We've been monitoring this location since 1956. You've gone too far. Seal the pit. Leave Dorchester Falls." The signal cut off. She looked around at her team. The pit vibrated again, louder this time, and as dust rose from the ground, the metal plate began to open, just slightly, enough to reveal a faint light underneath. Kincaid stared into the darkness below, her breath shallow. "What's down there?" Brooke asked. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Maybe what took them." And before anyone could move, a gust of freezing air burst from the opening, carrying with it the unmistakable sound of footsteps. The buried truth. The air around Dorchester Falls grew heavy, thick with dust and dread. The metallic hatch in the pit pulsed with faint light, casting an eerie glow across the faces of the investigators. No one spoke. The hum beneath the ground deepened, vibrating through their bones. Agent Laura Kincaid steadied her flashlight and looked at Sheriff Brooke. "If we leave now, we'll never know what happened to them," she said. He shook his head. "Or we'll end up just like them." But she was already climbing down. Each step echoed against the metal tunnel beneath the hatch. The walls were smooth, industrial, yet ancient, etched with strange markings she didn't recognize. As she descended, the light dimmed behind her until all she could hear was her own breathing and the faint rhythm of that pulse. Tick, tick, tick. At the bottom, she stepped into a vast chamber. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing rows upon rows of old, rusted machinery, wires embedded in the rock, and glass pods lining the walls. Inside each pod was a person, men, women, children, perfectly preserved, eyes closed, as if asleep. Each pod marked with a date, April 17th, 91, Dorchester Falls. Kincaid's throat tightened. She walked closer, pressing her hand against one of the pods. The face inside was familiar. Marcy Heller, the girl from the 911 call. Her body was intact, unmoving, but alive. Faint condensation rose and fell against the glass with every slow breath. Kincaid stumbled backward, whispering to herself. They didn't die. They were taken down here. Then a voice echoed behind her. You shouldn't have come. She spun around. From the shadows emerged a man in a long, dark coat, the same figure from the photographs. His face was pale, eyes hollow, but there was something unnatural in the way he moved, slow and deliberate. Who are you? She demanded. He smiled faintly. I was the first sheriff of Dorchester Falls. I stayed when they asked for volunteers. Kincaid's flashlight flickered. Volunteers for what? The preservation, he said. The cycle. Every 35 years, a town is chosen. We keep them safe until the world is ready again. And she shook her head. You're insane. You took them. You buried them alive. They're not dead, he replied calmly. They're waiting. The surface is dying. We're just resetting the clock. His words hung in the cold air. The hum grew louder, building into a low-frequency roar that made the ground quake. Overhead, dust rained down as the hatch began to close. Wait, Kincaid shouted. Who decides this? Who chooses the towns? The man tilted his head. We all did. Long ago. We just forgot. As the chamber shook, several pods flickered with light. The people inside began to stir, their fingers twitching against the glass. One pod cracked open with a hiss. Marcy's eyes snapped open, wide, glassy, unseeing, and she whispered the same haunting words from the tape. They're outside. Kincaid bolted up the tunnel as alarms echoed through the chamber. Behind her, the humming became a piercing tone. She reached the surface gasping and screamed for her team to seal the hatch. Brooke and the others rushed to pull her out just as the metal plate slammed shut, shaking the earth one final time. Then, silence. For hours, no one spoke. The entire town sat still, as if holding its breath. The fog began to lift, revealing a sky washed pale with dawn. Dr. Levin stood beside Kincaid, staring at the now-buried pit. What did you see down there? He asked. Kincaid's face was pale. People, she said. All of them. Still alive. Alive? Frozen in time. Preserved. Like the town never ended. Brooke looked toward the empty streets. Then why didn't we hear them? Kincaid didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small metal disc she had taken from the tunnel wall. It vibrated softly in her hand, the same rhythmic pulse. Because they're not speaking to us anymore, she whispered. They're listening. That night, federal agents sealed Dorchester Falls completely. The town was erased from maps, the investigation classified, the files locked away. Every investigator involved was reassigned within weeks. Kincaid received an anonymous letter soon after. No return address, no signature. Inside, a single sentence was typed on plain white paper. The next town awakens in 26. She stared at it for a long time, then folded it quietly into her coat pocket. Years later, satellite imagery would reveal something strange, a new patch of forest growing perfectly circular where Dorchester Falls once stood. No vegetation had grown there in decades, until now. Locals claimed to hear faint whispers at night when the wind passed through that forest, always at the same time, 4:43 a.m. And though no one ever returned to Dorchester Falls, travelers along the old Harrow River sometimes reported seeing a single light flicker deep among the trees, and a shadowed figure in a long coat standing silently beneath it. Waiting. If you made it this far, you're officially braver than most. But tell me, would you ever set foot in Dorchester Falls after hearing this? Because some places don't stay buried forever. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and stay tuned. The next story might be closer to your hometown than you think.